Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so today we'll take a look at the different classes and skills in Faenora Wildlands and go through each of them one by one so that you can get familiar with them. Now, skills are very important in your runs, especially during the second part and for tougher boss fights. Personally, I rely very heavily on skills to do a ton of damage and also for the team's survival. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's take a look at the classes that are available within the game. You can actually see all the different classes within the progression screen over here. And there are two basic classes. The first one would be the Squires, and the second one would be the Archers. Now, for Squires, once you get promoted, you can choose between the Knights or the Fighter. Right, so the Knights are actually more defensive characters, while the Fighters are more offensive characters. Personally, I actually prefer to use the Fighter class because they do have a healing skill, which we will cover later on. And of course, you can also see that there are two additional classes. A Knight once promoted can be a Paladin, and a Fighter once promoted will be a Ronin. So these two classes are not available in the alpha demo. And for the Archer class, once promoted, you can choose between a Cleric or a Witch. Right, so similar to the promoted class for a Squire, the Cleric is more defensive. These are the healers of the game, and the Witch is more offensive minded. Right, and for Clerics, once they are promoted, they can become a Priestess, which promoted will be Sorceress. So similarly, the Priestess and the Sorceress, they are both not available in the alpha demo. So that's pretty straightforward and simple. There are 6 classes available in the game right now, with an additional 4 coming soon, which I expect them to be all available on main launch. Okay, so we'll start off first with the main character. Now, to navigate to the skills page, all you need to do is to click on the skills button over here, which will bring up a list of the different skills a particular character has. Now, skills are divided into 3 different categories. The first would be the innate skill, next would be class, and then you have the battle skills. For the main character, the innate skill is basically what you chose right at the start of the game. For class skills, for the main character, it is Inspire skill, which is actually pretty good because what it does is it boosts the squad stats by 10%, and there's a 25% chance of this happening each turn. Now, do take note that you need to be at least level 10 in order to acquire this skill, but once you get it, it happens automatically. So all class skills happens automatically. You do not need to take an action, or you do not need to use your SP for it. Right, so this is something that when we take a look at other characters later on, you will see that the Witch class has their own class skill as well. Every class has their own class skill, and it happens automatically each turn. Now, next would be the battle skills. So the main character has 4 different battle skills. That's Phoenix Blast, Blade, Edge, and Storm. Right, Blast and Blade is pretty similar. What it does is, basically for Blast, it hits the entire column of the enemy squad. And for Blade, it does the same thing except that it is across the row. Right, so Blast would be the column, Blade would be across the row instead. Right, and both skills would be acquired at level 15. So this skill, you can see that the SP cost is 10 for each of them. Right, and the damage is it's okay. It's not a very high damage skill, but it's pretty okay. And the good thing is these 2 skills are actually available right at the start of each of your run. Right, so typically what I do is, especially for the early stages of your dungeon run, what I'll do is I'll use my main character and use these skills to clear the enemies very quickly. Right, typically, especially if you're higher level, you can clear the enemies within 1 or 2 turns using these 2 skills, so you can progress relatively fast. The next one would be Phoenix Edge. So Phoenix Edge, you can see, is a single target skill, only acquired at level 25, and it's pretty high cost as well because you need 50 SP in order to use the skill. But this skill is pretty good. It hits very, very hard, and I typically use this skill when it comes to bosses or tougher enemies during the second part of your run. And of course, we have Storm. So I'm not sure about you guys, but I have not been able to actually use the Storm skill yet. So what it actually does is it basically hits the entire enemy squad, right? And it's activated at level 30. Same cost as Edge, 50 SP. Given the fact that I have not been able to actually use this, I don't know the damage, but I can see the power level is B as compared to Edge is S. Right, so I'm assuming that this will be slightly less damage than Edge, but still higher damage than both Blast as well as Blade. So So if any of you guys actually manage to use Storm, let me know how much damage it actually does in comparison to the other 3 skills above. So I would really like to know what is the damage capacity of this particular skill. Right, so and that's it, this is what your main character actually has. We can move on next to the Squire. So let's take a look at the skills for the Squires next. Right, so on the skills list, you can see that their class skill is Farm Strength. So this basically gives a 10% attack boost to your Squires, and it's a passive, so it's immediately activated the moment you enter a fight. And the battle skills, there are 2 of them, the first one being Rush. So this is a single target skill, and it gives the stun status effect to the enemy. It's a pretty weak skill, power level is at D+, but it's quite low cost, right? So it's only 6 SP, and you can get this on like the 2nd or 3rd turn, so very easy to deploy. Slightly higher damage than the normal attack, but it does not really do much. And for the Headbutt skill, again it's a single target skill. The status effect it gives is a 10% self-damage. So when you're attacking the enemy, you're actually damaging yourself as well. This gives a slightly higher damage boost as compared to the Rush skill, with the power being B+, and the SP being 12. But again, the Squire is a primary class, so both skills actually do not do that much damage. Pretty straightforward for Squires. Again, they are primary class in the game, so try to get them promoted as soon as you can. Okay, so let's take a look at the Knights next. So Knights are actually a promoted class from the Squires. When you promote a Squire, you can choose between Fighters or Knights. For the class skill, it's actually Cover. What they do is there's a 10% chance every time adjacent allies are being attacked, they will get a physical damage immunity. So it's best to stick your Knights in the first row in the middle, flanked by 2 other characters, typically Fighters, so they will be able to help deal more damage. But this is very, very useful. Sticking your Knights right in the middle column will actually be able to allow them to protect members on their adjacent side. Now for the battle skills, you have Brace and Bodyguard. Brace is actually very useful, especially for the boss fights, because what it does is it provides a defense up for 2 turns for the entire squad. It's relatively high cost at 22 SP with a 4 turn cooldown. So once this skill actually expires, there will be 2 turns where you will not be able to have any cover at all before you can deploy this skill again. It's very useful for boss fights because bosses typically they have a major skill that they will use, like for the very first boss they have Boulder, and the last boss as well. When you see a boss charge up their skill, try to deploy this particular Knight skill Brace, which will then be able to boost your entire squad with their defense up in anticipation for a huge attack coming from the boss. And next we have Bodyguard. For Bodyguard, it's again a very, very useful skill. It's single target with an SP cost of 12. But what it does is it puts a shield on a specific character within your party. So very useful if one of your party members is going to die and you're not able to heal them in time for a big hit that's coming. Cast this skill on them and they will not get any physical damage at all. Of course, if it's a magic attack, then you have no choice, your character will probably just die. So overall, the Knight is a very good class to have, very defensive class with Cover, Brace as well as Bodyguard. So usually I would deploy just one of them in the squad. I'll put them in the first row, in the middle column, flanked by 2 fighters. So this is one of the more optimal formations in my book. So up next, let's take a look at the Fighter class, which is a promoted class from the Squires. So looking at their skill list, you can see that the class skill is Counter. What this does is every time the fighter gets attacked by an enemy, there's a 25% chance that they will counter attack that specific enemy. So this is pretty useful. You don't have to do anything. It's just a 25% chance that they will counter attack the enemy. And it's quite useful because I've seen the fighters counter attacking the enemy pretty often in the game. And for the battle skills, there's 2. Let's go through Chakra first. So Chakra is more of a defensive skill that also provides an attack up boost. It's a skill that basically allows them to recover their HP while at the same time boosting their attack, and it's targeted at themselves only. Right, so it's very useful when the fighter has received quite a lot of damage and they need to get some HP recovered, I will typically use the chakra skill. It has no cost, right? 0 SP, and there's a 3-turn cooldown, so be aware of this when you're using this. Typically, I would like to pair this up with Shadow Fist, so I will cast chakra first, and then the next turn I will hit with Shadow Fist. So taking a look at Shadow Fist. Shadow Fist is a skill that hits the entire enemy column, and it provides a 25% chance to stun the enemy as well. Power is C+, it does not do that much damage, but the good thing is you're hitting 3 enemies at the same time. SP cost would be 14, so quite a high cost for this particular skill. The way I use it is I will cast chakra first to recover some HP and also to get the attack up boost, and then on the next turn I will cast Shadow Fist in order to hit the entire enemy column or to hit the enemy boss. So overall, pretty useful class to have. It's more of an offensive class. I usually deploy at least 2 of them in the squad along with the knights in the first row. I have done an entire final boss kill with a full squad of fighters before without any healers. Right, so the main character and 5 fighters attacking the final boss, and I did manage to clear that with only 1 fighter dying during that fight. So very good class to have in your squad. Usually deploy at least 2 of them. Okay, so up next, let's take a look at the archers. For all archers, their class skill is the Dead Eye, which gives a 25% critical hit chance. This is a passive, and it's actually pretty good. It's pretty decent. I've seen archers hit quite a lot of crits during my time playing the game. And for the battle skills, they have 2. The first one is the magic arrow. This is slightly different because what they will do is the target is split across a row. So a row, you have 3 different positions. It will hit the first and the third position. Power level is D, so not that high damage, but the good thing is you get to hit 2 enemies at once with this skill, and the SP is 8. This skill can be deployed on the second or third turn. And of course, the second skill is the headshot. So this is slightly better with power level at A, so it does do slightly higher damage, but it is only a single target skill for this. So instead of hitting 2 enemies, you're only hitting 1 of them, but you're dealing more damage as well. The good thing is this has a lower SP cost as compared to Magic Arrow, so you can deploy this quicker. This skill is very useful when it comes to your mini boss fights, or if you happen to enter into the first boss fight and you still have not been able to promote this character, this skill is pretty useful. Again, this is a primary class character, so it's not very powerful. You will want to promote her as soon as possible to either a cleric or a witch. Right, so next, let's take a look at the cleric, which is a promoted class from the archer. So looking at the skill list, the class skill is Prayer, and what it does is it gives a 10% stat boost to the healed target at a 25% chance of this happening. This is a very good skill, especially when the entire squad is fully healed and you don't know what to do with your clerics, right? So basically just heal one of your fighters to try to get the 25% chance for a 10% stat boost to that particular character. For their battle skills, the first one will be Heal Plus. So Heal Plus basically heals the entire row for your party, and this is very useful again when it comes to a boss fight, especially when a boss does an AoE on your whole squad. You need to be able to get everybody healed up as fast as possible. So I would use my clerics and I'll deploy this skill to heal up the entire row for the party. And of course, the next skill would be Holy Light. So Holy Light is the only offensive ability for the cleric. What it does is it targets a single enemy and it attacks them. So again, because this is a defensive class, so the damage that this skill does is not very high. But if you have nothing else to do with the cleric and you have some spare SP, this is a good skill to use just to hit an attack on that particular enemy. Overall, this is a very defensive class, but it's a critical class to have in your party. I usually have at least 2 of them at the final boss. They will be able to work off each other and heal the entire squad up, especially when the boss does the big AoE. Do 2 different heal plus on the first row and the cleric row, then you get the entire party healed up as fast as possible. So again, very essential class to have. Always have at least 1, if not 2 clerics in your party. And next would be the Witch class, which is the second promoted class from an archer. And taking a look at the skill list, you can see that the class skill is Weaken. What this does is it increases the magic stat by 15% for 2 turns. So there's a 25% chance of this happening, and the witch actually casts this on herself. It increases the witch's attack. For the battle skills, Flame Wall does an AoE attack across the entire row of the enemy's squad. Power level at C+, so does not really do that high of a damage, but again, you're hitting 3 enemies at the same time. And take note that the SP is 18. For the witch class, they aren't able to use any skills right off the start during a fight. You will need to wait for at least a few turns, usually about 3 turns before being able to deploy any skill at all. And the second skill will be Bolt Blast. So this is a single target skill and it does a huge attack. The SP is 30, so again very high cost skill but does huge damage. So overall, the witch class is a pretty good class to have for her offensive abilities. Usually I'll have about 1 of them in my party during the final boss fight. So that's it. I hope this guide has been useful in helping you to understand the different classes and skills within the game. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments or DM me. I'll be happy to answer them where I can help. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.